was another one. And there's so many, it's weird to say there's so many, but we're going to start the show in a few minutes talking about just some of the people we lost. And I just say that because it's a good thing that we can start the show laughing a little bit, because kind of on a downtrodden start, no less, but a really good movie that we're going to be talking about today. Well, 2/3 of us are going to be talking about today. We're going to review The Wild Robot, since Dubuque did not get Megalopolis, the new Francis Ford Coppola movie. And I regret to inform you, gentlemen, because the movie made so much at the box office this weekend. You know, it's amazing that we didn't get it again this weekend. We're not getting it again this weekend. It's a damn shame. I don't know if we will now. Quite honestly, I don't think they're going to expand this thing after how poorly it did.
Let's be real here. It's gonna go straight to video on demand ASAP to try to recoup anything at this point.
Which, you know, fucking sucks, because like that movie, like, you know, there's right to be skeptical about it. Dom already saw it. Dom, would you not tell me anything? Do not. I already probably saw way too much on social media. Anyway,
move on. Let's go. Wild Robot.
I know. I know about the club, just to let you know. I know about that. But my question to you, though, regardless of your opinion, it's a movie to see on the big screen, is it not?
It is a movie to see, period, and a movie to see on the big screen as well. I think it is worth your time as a work of art. Whether you think it's good or not is a whole different discussion that we will honestly engage in.
We will.
But I think it's worth your time. It is Francis Ford Coppola's swan song, probably. That guy's really old now. I don't know his age, but he's getting up there. He's been working on this for 10 years, supposedly. So it's
way longer, actually. Yeah.
It's a start and stop situation, but probably the last 10 years exclusively.
Yeah, there's been discussion on like, hey, so like some of the all-time greatest directors, what are some of their not so great hits? And when people were listing, it was a Twitter thread, right? It's like listing some of the things that's like Scorsese's put out a lot of movies. In fact, one of them just recently, I don't think we were very fond of ourselves. But in terms of Megalopolis, I will only tease very lightly with this, which is that I think of the three of us, I might be more forgiving. We will see. For what reason? That's a whole different ball game.
I'm excited to talk about it. It will not be today, but I'm excited to talk about it in the very near future. Fingers crossed. Either way.
They got him.
They got him. They got me. They got me. No, quite honestly, it's a short, I think, in my webcam video.
No, I saw.
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. We come to you every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time, coast to coast, live and in living color, how we like it. Got the trio back together, too, how we like it as well. After his absence last week, he is back. Dominic Guanzon back in the show today. Looking forward to this because we're going to tackle this movie a little bit earlier. I had to put it on the back burner a little bit, so glad to be able to finally chat about it here coming up soon. Is Will and Harper, a brand new Netflix documentary. Came out a little over a month ago, starring Will Ferrell and Harper Steele. I'll dive into that, give that more of an intro coming up here very soon. But Dominic, haven't heard from you in about 2 weeks. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm here, yo. It is the Christmas rush where we get ready for Christmas events. And that's pretty much all I can say, honestly. Not that it's a big secret, but I just don't want to talk about work after coming back from work. So let me say that I am hoping to see more friends in this holiday season. We all three of us need to hang out at some point. Steve, when are you going to be back from? You don't have to say it live here on air, but we do need to talk about when you come back back home to the old 630 at some point.
Oh, there we go. I muted my mic now. I gotta give you the Immortan Joe jerseys that you guys requested.
That's right. I forgot about those.
Yeah. Honestly, at some point I was like just considering. I'm like, fuck it. I might as well just mail it to you guys at this point.
I think Dom has. Don't you have a Jets jersey or
I have a
shirt
Jets
of mine?
And potentially one more. I've honestly forgotten.
I think I honestly think Sam Darnold was the quarterback when he got me that Jets hoodie. That's how long it's been.
Holy shit.
That's how long it's
really
been.
Funny.
Well, truthfully, that was only like 2 years ago, to be completely fair. The Jets have gone through like a million quarterbacks, but like I just was thinking about
who would have thought Garrett Wilson was their best guy?
Yeah, Dom's had that hoodie so long that Sam Darnold's actually good now. Anyway, though, I'd love to get together.
He's my fucking starting QB for fantasy. Go Darnold.
But I was gonna say, good little week off though, or good little week off from the show, I would say.
Yes, for me, yes, definitely, because it was much needed. I did bring family, so whenever family comes to town, either from out of state or even out of the country, which was the case here, I am the designated tour guide, and I'll be honest. I like doing touristy things in Chicago, even though I've done them a billion times. The architecture tour, the freaking
it's an amazing tour.
Yeah, honestly, like I didn't go to the Field Museum, but because I couldn't go every single day that they went because we were all working, but so we kind of cycled them around the family. But to the chance to go to all the museums, I love going to that. So I love Chicago. No matter being a basic bitch in Chicago, I'll be frank. Yeah.
Can I suggest something?
Next
time, if you ever want to do something like this, download the Go City app. It has plenty. Yeah, Go City. There's so many bundles for things that you were just talking about, where you can get them at a lower rate than just paying for them individually. I do it from time to time over the summer because I just like exploring Chicago and just like learning about it more. Like I did the architecture tour this season, and I went to the 360 view for only $40 for both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. Is it Go City?
Go City, yeah.
This show is sponsored by GoCity.com.
I'll have to think about that too. I'll have to look into that too. How are you, Joseph? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Work's been very, very busy. I had to go to the DMV for work, which it already sucks going for just your personal reasons.
For work?
For work, yeah. So it's like, well, at least I'm getting paid to sit here and fucking listen to a kid cry next to me.
Nothing, I was gonna say, nothing like making you long for your desk.
Yeah, honestly. And this is the third time I've had to go now, because the first time I went, I asked for a bunch of paperwork, or what paperwork I need to have to get this stuff done for our vehicles that the city owns. And they went, you need this, this, and this. I'm like, cool, I'll bring it next week. I went the following week. Lady told me, you fucked up. None of this is correct. Cool, I'll be back with the correct stuff. I came back today. The lady was like, No, whoever told you that messed up. You actually had it right the first time. But we'll process everything for you anyway. You just need to come and bring a new check dollar amount and have these 2 documents signed, and we'll wrap it up for you. I'm like, why couldn't you be here from the start? Like, why couldn't I have
worst.
you? Like,
that's the worst.
It
is
really
when they
is.
don't even. It was when you did everything right.
Hey, I could go. That could be the whole show today. I could tell you guys about my 3 experience, but I won't do that. The thing I just wanted to say is, like I said, it's been good. Softball season's over. We only had 3 wins, but I expected that. This was a very, very rookie team who's never played baseball, or some people never played a sport competitively in their lives. So the fact we actually got 3 wins, I was actually surprised. One of the wins, we ended up winning 22-3, and I was like, God damn, all right. You take for granted these kind of things. Like, I played I played baseball my whole life as a kid and everything. I played it a little bit in school too. And so I just thought, like, it's kind of just natural instinct of catching a ball and, like, you know, kind of like getting the idea of hitting a ball and everything. What just makes you good is, like, you know, the throwing, knowing where the bases are, and who to throw to, cutoffs, all this stuff, the tactics. It wasn't until I started training my friends that I realized, like, holy shit, no, I took that stuff for granted. I got to build these people from the ground up. So we're already, everybody's on board for another season. I told them we'll actually do spring training, and I'll let you guys know how the record goes next year.
All right.
Good stuff. Been enjoying hearing about your softball pursuits.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Gang's all here today. We're ready to talk Will and Harper. Brand new documentary that is currently streaming on Netflix, was released in the middle of September. This was kind of a festival darling over at the Sundance Film Festival when it premiered back in January before being acquired for Netflix. Also had a very limited theatrical release. The movie was directed by Josh Greenbaum. That name sounds familiar. He's been pretty prolific over the last couple of years, too. He directed Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, and he also last year directed Strays, which Will Ferrell was also a part of, loaned his voice to that one about the stray dog comedy. So Greenbaum's been pretty active. This is his third documentary. He did one on James Bond and one on the Dana Carvey show. So he has been pretty prolific and just pretty well-rounded, I would say, for his career. This movie has a very compelling premise right from the jump. Essentially, the movie revolves around Will Ferrell and his friend Harper Steele. Harper was born Andrew Steele and was a writer on Saturday Night Live from about 96 to 2008. So Will Ferrell describes the relationship he had at the time with Andrew, working on SNL. How Will Ferrell was kind of a little bit of an outcast on SNL, but Andrew would write different things for him. Well, eventually, time passes, and shortly into the documentary, Will Ferrell gets a letter from now Harper Steele saying that she has transitioned into being a woman. She's now transgender, come out of the closet, and is now living life as a transgender woman. So Will Ferrell decides not only to go back and reconnect with her because they haven't seen each other in a long time, but also take a 17-ish day road trip across the United States. And this is really the road trip aspect of this movie is really because Harper Steele, to quote Charles Bukowski, kind of lives like the laureate of American lowlife. Loves going to dive bars, loves like seedy, like greasy spoon restaurants, things like that. Just like quintessentially broad shoulder activities, like not only dive bars, but also like going to basketball games and sporting events and things like that. Racing as well, dirt track racing too. So it's essentially seeing as if she can still go to these places and find herself accepted as a transgender woman. That's the crux of Will and Harper. This is a very sweetly made movie. I'll say that much. Its intentions are very good. I think it's a compelling watch. One of the things that really stuck out to me first and foremost, here's the thing. They're not going to like Chicago. They're not going to like Houston. They're not going to these big areas. They're actually going to a lot of like small to medium-sized conservative towns, which I'm not going to lie. And there's a good stretch of this movie that's set in the Midwest. I'm not going to lie. There's some really like, I love how ugly some of the B-roll was of just these like areas. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to Peoria. Oh my God, they're going to Peoria. Like, I'm like, they went to Peoria. They went to Iowa City, which is where Steele's from. They went to Iowa City, which is actually about an hour and 35 minutes away from me. They go to Iowa City where she grew up. They go visit her sister. They go see her childhood home and things like that. They go to, I think one of the more, and I'll talk about this later unless you guys want to tack into it. I think one of the most interesting and sweetest sequences when they go to Meeker, Oklahoma, the dive bar out there and things like that. There's a little bit of a rocky, uncomfortable scene in Amarillo, Texas, too. So there's like they're going to a lot of these like small to medium sized cities, which is kind of a typical for a movie of this sort of caliber. Then you also have appearances from Kristen Wiig, Will Forte, Molly Shannon, things like that. I do have some misgivings about this thing. I'm not gonna lie, I do have some criticisms, but it's really hard to kind of like plant a flag in those passionately when the movie like this does have good intentions, does have some really sweet scenes, and I also think too really brings itself around in a way that's, I don't want to say neat, but kind of brings itself around what Harper starts to discover about herself. And it's after, without giving it away, one of the sequences is actually after she goes to the dirt track for the first time as a woman, and what she comes to realize and what she processes after going to this like Confederate flag donning dive bar in Meeker, Oklahoma. What she starts to realize about her versus society. I have one more big point that I'll make besides my criticisms. I'll shut up right now. I got one more point I want to make about the Amarillo, Texas scene. I'll save that for later. Joe, what say you?
Yeah, I this right out the gate after I got done watching this, I was on a high. I was like, this was such a heartwarming documentary and everything. I loved it. And then like when I woke up today, or when I woke up yesterday, because I watched this movie on Monday, I kind of like, started to feel like not too differently about it, but there were some things now I was like looking back on, I'm like, actually, wait, no, hold on. This I kind of had issues with, but I'll wait for your criticisms and then I'll share mine. The positives here is that I think this is a great documentary to watch. I think it does a great job at A, being entertaining, B, being an interesting subject matter, and from the get-go, you're on board with it, and you're just like, I actually want to see how this will play out. My favorite moments of this movie is how much this documentary actually, I think, did a good job at really, really selling the perspective of what Harper is going through. And the fact, like, what she's feeling in these scenes and how she feels going into something like an Indiana Pacers game, a dive bar in, Indiana or whatever it was. And they do such a good job at exploring the headspace that Harper was in before her transition and after it. And they share memos from her journal. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. They often just, she opens herself up a ton in this documentary. She's very open about like, yeah, this is what I used to do. I used to wear women's clothes. I used to go here. I used to do this. I did that. And then you learn some more darker secrets about her. And it's really the most interesting part about the documentary is learning everything about her and really giving you an inside look of like where she's at in her head while dealing with this transition, and really putting yourself in the shoes of like somebody who was connected to all these people on SNL, has probably thousands upon thousands of connections from people that have been on that show, and kind of closed herself off from them because of her transition, and now is slowly opening back up. I think it does such a great job at that. Especially, it being a road trip, it really makes you feel like you're actually spending time with these people. You're actually really understanding what they're going through and what they're dealing with. And the craziest thing was, and this was probably my favorite part about the documentary, and it has nothing to really do with the documentary, but because she was with someone like Will Ferrell, there was so much documentation on social media just on its own. And I went on social media and I found so many times throughout 2023 where these two were spotted together throughout like everywhere they went, and just seeing kind of the public, it, for better or for worse, seeing how the public perceived who Will Ferrell was with. And it's honestly really interesting to. I wish I would have seen this stuff before I saw the documentary, because I would have loved to have that context going in and everything. Not that I don't think it would change anything, but I think it would just bring a new perspective while watching it. But going back and looking at it made me just go like, wow, like, I feel like, and this is just me, but I feel like if you would have watched this documentary and you would have understood what Will Ferrell was doing for his friend and what he wanted to do for her in terms of making her feel more comfortable to go in these places, I feel like you feel like a dick for saying some of the stuff that you said on social media, because it was just like, and Harper, dude, she is one of the most down to earth fucking people ever, man. The fact that she's like all about going to like these diners with greasy food and dive bars with like, like probably like fucking handles Malort like a champ too. It's like, dude, she's honestly just as fun as some of these people that like, so that probably would make fun out of her, or have like some disgust towards her. I'm not trying to like specify people here when I say that too, but like the documentary does kind of like, it doesn't point a finger at someone, but it does show a crowd that you think would be totally hating on someone who Harper is, and it's just like, yeah, but like I feel like it shouldn't be like that because of who she actually is deep down inside and whatnot, and it's a whole bag of worms we can dissect as we go through. I don't want to keep talking because I'll just keep going. So Dom, what are your initial thoughts?
No, man, this is probably, I mean, look, we're literally 2 weeks away from an election, like less than 2 weeks, truly. And this could be my personal like bias and like, perception of things, but this feels like purely in the context of transgender issues, this feels like one of the most important.
Yeah.
Both nationally and locally. And it's really amazing just how much of a stride we've come since like gay marriage was protected under the Supreme Court. Hey, remember when the Supreme Court did cool things? But anyway, in terms of where trans issues are these days, it's really made headwinds, and it's gone to a place. Honestly, I'm really curious. I don't know how much you guys want to put yourself out there, but for me, it's like I was not aware of trans issues until like honestly a few years ago. I want to say even like after the pandemic, which shows how little I really knew.
I mean, I'll piggyback off of this. I mean, I kind of thought when Caitlyn Jenner came out, I was like, all right, well, I mean, this is just a thing now in the world. I didn't know how much of an issue it was until, probably around the same time too, Dom, that I was like, wait, like this is actually like this big of a concern. Like I can understand there's gonna be people out there that are always gonna hate something that's different, that they're not used to, that like, that looks different from them, is different entirely from what they're used to, and they just hate on it, and they just have a way of expressing that. But for how many problems I should say that actually exist in that community shocked me.
Yeah, dude. For what it's worth, I think probably just going to the city more has opened my eyes to it. And even at my personal work, it's like, oh yeah, that person's probably trans, and I didn't even recognize it as such. But regardless, as for the movie itself, this is, I don't dare like predict how much of a impact it will have in the mainstream culture, but this feels like a movie that you should maybe recommend to someone that was like me a few years back, that was not very aware of these kinds of issues, because it's a very it's definitely has its sad moments, but it's certainly it feels a little lighter, right? And it's a little muted throughout. It's not lighter as in like completely floaty and happy-go-lucky. And it is, I mean, honestly, I have not seen Will Ferrell this serious, because it's a documentary, of course. It's not a fictional thing, but I haven't seen him this muted since like Stranger Than Fiction. Do you guys remember that movie?
Yeah.
From way back.
But also in like Everything Must Go. Some of his dramas are sneaky good.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what they say. It's like if you've mastered comedy, you're probably really good at at drama, just because comedy is the more difficult thing. Some opinions are, but in terms of this film, yeah, dude, it's so accessible. I mean, first of all, you got Will Ferrell, who, I mean, I know maybe people our age have gotten sick of him these days, but honestly, it's he's just he still got it in terms of his humor. It's just a matter of what context you find that in, right? So when he's not being Ron Burgundy, he's actually a really cool guy, it looks like. And the friendship between him and Harper is really, really cool to see blossom. And it's very nice to see to see Harper take a center stage here as well. It's a very loving, giving and taking kind of relationship between two very funny people, very accomplished funny people. I mean, goodness gracious, these two people came in to SNL just guns ablazing in terms of making an impact in the 90s. Will Ferrell speaks for himself, but I mean, Harper was right there behind him the whole time, like literally behind the scenes in the writers' rooms. And I kind of wish, one thing that I wish that they had done was, I don't know if they should have like explored their SNL days a little bit more, but I think it would have been cool to see like what did Harper write in terms of because she was head writer from 2004 to 2008. I mean, goodness gracious, that's the second term of the Bush presidency, right? So it's like, what kind of stuff was she? I think Will was literally George Bush during that time. It floated between multiple cast members, that impression, but Will was definitely one of them. But to see them now as grizzled ancients, as grizzled veterans of SNL, and it's so cool to see. It's I don't know how to describe it. It's like, yeah, after a war, and now you see like all these veterans of the comedy world. There's cameos, not even cameos, just straight up like appearances from, yeah, as you guys were saying, Kristen Wiig, Will Forte. Just Will Forte comes out of nowhere. I
Comes in a
love that scene
balloon.
where they're the hot air balloon. It's so funny.
It's just like, oh, there's Will Forte in a hot air balloon.
Exactly. Molly Shannon. There's a scene where they're having like dinner with some of the others in
Tim Meadows.
100%, yes. And it's so cool to see them kind of with their guard down. There's plenty of opportunities to see these folks with their guard down, but to see it in the context of like, hanging out with Harper, who is someone that I don't think a lot of people really knew until, this is 4-time Emmy nominated and 1-time Emmy winning Harper freaking Steele, who wrote probably a lot of sketches that we found funny back in the day. And now we get to see a little bit more of them. But in terms of this movie, goodness gracious, it's definitely heartwarming. And I'm a sucker for road movies. I really truly am. Whether it's from I can't think of it, but from road trip movies from the 90s to freaking Civil War, which came out this year. I'm a sucker for road trip movies. And this is combining so many good things, which is a very prescient social issue, very disarming, very funny people with a road trip movie. And you really do have a recipe and result for, I believe, a very good success here for a really good movie. Yeah.
I'll say to kind of continue what I was going to say earlier, but I didn't want to overload my introduction. Like, I'm gonna be the unpopular one here. I am not a big Will Ferrell fan. I never have. That's
fair.
Been.
I get it.
I never have been. I like Anchorman a lot. I think that's his best movie. It's hard to argue with that movie, and I think the satire and the Ron Burgundy character. I like Step Brothers. I think the kind of aggressiveness of that movie it kind of wears me down at times when I rewatch it, because it's always like so like it's a headstrong kind of aggressively toned movie, but I do like it. And I would dare say you could damn near keep the rest. I'm not a Will Ferrell fan.
You don't like Talladega Nights?
Talladega Nights is very overrated in my opinion.
Fuck, okay.
It's very overrated. I'm not claiming to be in the majority here either.
It's so difficult because it's like I rewatch so many clips on YouTube. So it's like, yeah, this is a funny moment. This may be the reason why this clip is so popular, because the rest of the movie probably sucks. I don't know.
That's kind of what I say about Talladega Nights.
Yeah.
That's really my whole thing.
The Applebee's commercial when they're crashing in slow motion is literally one of the funniest moments in cinema history for me. Like I was laughing my ass off, but I actually don't remember if the rest of that movie was good. And I probably wouldn't find it funny if I was watching it now, up until that Applebee's commercial where I will immediately burst out laughing. But
and that's why there's the argument of like these SNL, like Talladega Nights is not by definition of SNL movie, but it stars an SNL alum. But like I almost think that that's why movies like that star SNL alums like Adam Sandler and Chris Farley and Will Ferrell are so consistently inconsistent because they play like individual scenes play very well. But when you stretch them to have to fit the framework of a 1 hour and 45-minute movie, it loses its luster. There's a lot of Will Ferrell movies though that I just don't care for. The one that I wish I liked more actually Harper Steele wrote, and that's Casa de mi Padre. And I didn't realize it until today.
That's the one in Spanish, right?
That's the Spanish telenovela parody. What'd you say, Joe?
I was gonna say that's how I felt about the sequel to Anchorman, and I actually think the sequel's okay, but I felt like the sequel was just like skits of SNL of the Ron Burgundy team just doing stuff randomly.
Yes, I think I'm looking at his filmography right now. Maybe it's a selected filmography. Either way, I think the last good movie that I've seen from Will, like good movie, right? Not just funny moments. I think is The Other Guys from 2010. And that's probably because Adam McKay was in it, or like not in it, but like, directed it and stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm looking at this now. Like do you remember 2009's Land of the Lost? Because I barely do. And I don't think it's that good. But there is one scene where they go up to him and Danny McBride go up to a crystal, and then it's like the crystal, like, because it's got like scientific powers or whatever, magical powers or whatever, it like distorts their voice, and it's like, whoa, I sound like Cher from that one song. And then they just start singing Do You Believe in Love After Love? And for some reason, again, extremely funny that one moment. The rest of the movie I cannot remember because it probably sucked. Yeah.
No, I'm not a Will Ferrell fan though. Even his style of comedy, if it's not like wickedly abrasive and aggressive, like kind of Step Brothers-ish, I find it awkward, and I always find him. This isn't his first documentary. He did a documentary called Ferrell Takes the Field a few years ago, where he played for like several different baseball teams over the course of a day. Now he did this for I said he did this for charity, but the documentary was for the swell of his ego, because that's what it felt like. And he's muted here, Dom. You said that he's muted here. But there's a few moments in this thing I wish he would have just let Harper take the reign. That's why I think that Meeker, Oklahoma scene works so well. It's because he sits outside for a considerable amount of time and lets his friend, who's the real subject of the documentary, take hold from there. Like, it's just my own dislike for Will Ferrell that I think creeps into it. But I think his intentions are pure. I'll say that much here. I think he genuinely cares for Harper. I think that comes across in various instances. But I still find that there's moments where he tries a little too hard to hijack the movie out from under her.
Can I agree with you?
When he's yelling at the dogs from the hot air balloon, that's funny.
That was funny.
The iconic Will Ferrell screaming at you or screaming at something is so like, he falls back on that so much, many times too much, not gonna lie. But in that scene, because he's so like blasé for most of the other movie, it really works there. But anyway, sorry, Joe, what were you saying?
No, so one criticism I do, and I like Will Ferrell, I do, but I do see what Steve is saying. And oddly enough, but like, it's a double-edged sword in how this scene does play out. It's the scene where they do eat the steak at the in what is it in Texas? Amarillo. He comes in dressed like Sherlock Holmes. I don't know why. It's not one of his most infamous characters. It's actually a movie I think that a lot of people dislike. So he comes dressed in as Sherlock Holmes. Okay, sure, whatever. He draws a bunch of attention and everything. And it's just like, dude, like, is this movie about Harper? Or is this movie, you like, doing little skits like this on the road with Harper?
He kind of brought that on. He kind of brought that on her. And I didn't like that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the double-edged part. Is the scene that follows it, and it's Will realizing, yeah, I kind of fucked up, and he feels guilty, and they talk through it and everything, and it brings another perspective on what it's like to be trans, and you're going with somebody who is garnering a lot of attention, whether it is someone famous or just like, you're doing something to attract a lot of attention. Like, I can go with a trans friend of mine, and we can go to Buffalo Wild Wings. If I do the Blazing Challenge, guess what? Everybody in the fucking restaurant's going to turn and look at us because I'm doing the Blazing Challenge, and they're going to notice my trans friend next to me. And that might bring like some things. And it's just like, okay, it did bring another perspective, unwanted attention. Sometimes these people, like, they just want to go, and they just want to go, and they want to be like every other customer in there. Go to their table, eat their food, mind their own business. And like, it's like, wow, this actually did bring another perspective. But it's moments like that made me go, is Will trying to make little skits out of this during the documentary?
Yeah, because he would I'm glad that they got to repurpose that or sort of change the direction of that scene. I also think an entirely different perspective than on this scene that comes after the Amarillo, Texas scene when they're showing all the nasty Instagram comments and everything. I think it's worth noticing that most of the transphobia, as it's known, that Harper experiences is generally online. And it even in places where you do not think like she'd be quote unquote welcome.
Yeah.
She's welcome. She's just like, and she's accepted in Meeker in the bar in Meeker because she's just trying to be herself and just trying to have a drink.
I do wonder though, if the premise for those scenes that, if you just go in and talk to people, it's actually going to be so bad, is kind of betrayed by the fact that not only does Will Ferrell show up shortly after, but rather there's cameras. I don't know how well. And I wish they had addressed how well hidden these cameras were.
That was a big criticism I had.
It's probably like a dude with a giant ass camera in the corner, and it's like, well, that's
my second criticism. Yeah. That's my second criticism. We're butting up against the break here. I don't mean to cut you off, Tom. We will bounce back in and talk about that. I want to lead with that coming back. Sleepless with Steve, live on this Wednesday evening. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a couple of minutes. I will prove to you that I'm one of the biggest Weird Al nerds to ever walk the earth. What is the opening line in this movie? It's heard on the radio when Daniel Radcliffe as Al is it's not Daniel Radcliffe at that point, but when Weird Al is young and listening to that radio under his covers, a Dr. Demento show, the opening line of the movie, and it comes from the radio, it's like, gabardine suits are 30% off. No Life Me over here did the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the TV screen and said to nobody except for my two long-suffering cats over here. That's a reference to his parody of King of Pain by the Police called King of Suede.
Nice.
In King of Suede, he plays a fabric salesman who owns a fabric store. And the opening line of that song, there's a sale on our gabardine suits today. They're all 30% off from yesterday. Your boy knew that. And I bet you there's less than 10 people that caught that. I bet you there's less than 10 people that caught that because King of Suede is one of my favorite Al songs.
There are some Weird Al super stands out there. And you are one of them, for sure. But I think there's more than you might be letting on. But
I want to know how many people picked up on gabardine suits being 30% off. But anyway, though, this is the long-awaited adaptation of the Funny or Die sketch that came out, 12 years ago. Directed by the same man who directed the movie, Eric Apple.
Directed the sketch?
Yeah, he directed the sketch, too. Eric Apple directed the Funny or Die sketch in 2010. That had Aaron Paul. This one has a whacked-out, weird, unhinged performance by Daniel Radcliffe, which is the crowning jewel of this movie. Daniel Radcliffe is great. And the funny joke about this, too, like there's a couple things with Daniel Radcliffe playing Al that's funny in itself. Number one, he looks like him to a degree. You can tell there's a lot of costuming to make him look like Weird Al, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I don't know if you know this, Weird Al is a tall drink of water. That guy's like 6'3", 6'4".
He's tall as shit.
He's huge. And it's hard because you see him in videos, it doesn't do him justice. You look at him like standing next to fans. The guy is a giant. I saw him in concert, and I was like maybe 6 rows back. He's huge. He's a towering figure. And Daniel Radcliffe is probably my height, like 5'10", 5'11". You know, so that's kind of one of the jokes of this movie too, is that like if you catch it, is like, man, he's definitely shorter than Al by a several inches. But this movie is very much not to be taken seriously. This is a total satire, a parody movie, probably one of the first parody movies we've gotten in a long, long time.
Yeah, man.
That is sort of an exaggerated, hyper exaggerated, not only telling of Weird Al's life, but also the rock and roll biopic genre in general, which we have quite a few examples to go off of over the last several years: Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, and Elvis. However you feel about those three movies, and I feel some type of way about each, those three movies are drastically different from each other in ways to make a biopic. Elvis almost is sort of an amalgam between the two, but to a dialed up degree. Where Weird, on the other hand, is just like, again, like the kissing cousin to Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping. That's been the movie, the point of comparison I made even when the trailer dropped. I said this movie is going to be very much in that wheelhouse, and it absolutely is. What say you generally about Weird, the Al Yankovic story?
This I actually did not know about the Funny or Die sketch, the original sketch way back when.
Oh, okay.
And I got a little nervous whenever I see Funny or Die pop up, just because their humor is, for me, hit or miss. Let me say this, in that it is either funny or it dies for me, in the true literal sense of that phrase, because I don't know, maybe there's something about the transitional period from 2000s to 2010s. Maybe it's I just grew out of some of that humor. Some of it's timeless, don't get me wrong. Some of it, I feel like not so much, and I could go into why. I don't know. Maybe it was because I was more of an Adult Swim kind of guy. But not that this was, not adult humor, but regardless. I could probably write a dissertation on how I feel about that and still be wrong. But where this movie lands is that it plays it somewhat straight, and then it veers off into total insanity. There is a point where you don't even realize it, where it's like, oh, we're here now. We're doing this. I thought you were just going to play it subtle, but tongue-in-cheek, so not subtle. But then there's a point where it goes, like, full-on Police Squad. Like,
back and better than ever. After the Zoom-sponsored intermission and Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube, we ended on a really good note, though, to come back in the second half of the show to talk about my second criticism, which I think, my dislike for Will Ferrell aside, I don't think he's bad here. I really don't. I think he's kind of his usual self, which will always irk me in some ways, but I think his intentions ultimately are pure. Probably the larger criticism here from me is that this movie feels too polished for what it's trying to be. The movie structure gets in its own way, or it seems like Will and Josh Greenbaum want to assign more structure to this than is necessary. They almost try to compartmentalize a few scenes, especially when we get to the ending, and sort of frame this in a really neatly kind of packaged and tidy ending that I frankly don't think the movie needed. This movie has a real shaggy sense of humor, I guess you would say. It's a lot of really odd places to go for a road trip movie that are not very glamorous. I don't know why the structure of this had to be very neat and organized, and it's kind of what both you two alluded to when we were talking to it going into break, is that it also sort of undermines the legitimacy of some of the scenes, or makes you call into question the authenticity of the scenes that are in bars or even at the Indiana Pacers game, or just things like that. It makes it call into question, because it's like, well, how apparent are the cameras? And from some of the reflections we see of the camera crew, whether it's in like the window or just on the periphery, they had a full camera crew for this thing.
They did. How I was talking, and this is kind of what made me. It dawned on me when I woke up the next day, like, wait a minute, how was the camera situation? Because like, was it like Borat, where it's like that shit's like hidden very well and whatnot? Right. But like, you go back and you look at the videos from 2023 on Twitter, wherever you may go. I saw the camera crew at the Pacers game. Dude, it is camera mounted like rigs against the body so that they can like turn and do this with it. And they're just following them. And there's a guy with a boom mic too. And it's just like, dude, yeah, no, like people are gonna act different because there's a camera there.
Why didn't you get these two lapel mics?
I don't get why. Like, yeah, they didn't do lav mics. They didn't do anything because it's just like, I hate to say it, I'm glad Harper had a good time with this experience from at least the documentary's point of view, and it seemed like places are welcoming her. But I also fear for her because I feel like some of these places may have downplayed how they were feeling or just didn't do anything because it was a fucking guy with a camera crew in the corner of the fucking area.
At the end of the movie, they say like, "Hey, I'm gonna go back across the country, back to the East Coast, just by myself." And I'm like, "No, don't do that. Don't do that without Will Ferrell and a camera crew." And then apparently Will Ferrell joins her, which is good. But yeah, dude, that's the insidious thing about racism is that, you know. And this is a recent story in the past couple of months, but Nazis on the corner waving Nazi swastika flags with their Nazi armbands doing the Hail Hitler. That is a 0.00001% of actual racism in any society, right? It's extremely, extremely small because those people are just genuinely mentally broken.
Joker too.
Most prejudice, especially racism, especially sexism, is especially anti-trans mentalities. It all happens insidiously, and yeah, I do wonder because like when Will Ferrell was shaking the hand of that governor of Indiana,
oh dude,
and it's like, well, okay, to be fair, they were in public in a Pacers game, but I wonder, was there the dude with the camera on his breastplate? It's like, well, yeah, of course he's gonna say a politician nice stuff. Right.
Yeah,
and I also understand.
I knew about that governor's like stance on all that stuff before watching this. So when he popped up, I went, oh, I'm like, no.
I mean, governor of Indiana. That's
yeah. How could you not be surprised, right?
Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana before he became vice president. And honestly, in a post-Trump world, you do see some of that hate, people being more unabashed to do it, or maybe that's just boomers' inability to realize that Facebook is not anonymous. But in terms of prejudice, it's more systemic. People put on a face. So yeah, that Oklahoma bar scene, I was thinking specifically, I think there would have been some kind of incident had the camera crew not been there, let alone Will Ferrell showing up. But
yeah, and it's not like that's not what I want to see. But like again,
right, that's not the point of this, right? It's not Borat. This is not Jackass, where they're trying to
it's not Bad Grandpa. People, like it's like
yeah.
But it's like
it sort of dampens the message a little bit, or like because this is a very like incubator situation. That's it can't be a replicable or comparable to maybe real life in that way.
Yeah,
it's a little manufactured, and that's where for a movie that's got like this, again, I say it again, this sort of like off the wall, sort of conversational humor, low key humor. I think it's just too polished for what it is. That was the only thing that kind of drove me a little nuts about it. Like, I'll give you another example too. It's funny. I was just reading about this. From an article in Vulture about Will and Harper, the Josh Greenbaum and Jessica Albaum, who is one of the producers on the movie, they said that they initially considered deliberately creating comedic moments, but they decided to let funny moments occur spontaneously. Let me just say, number one, in the scene in Iowa City, I don't fucking believe that unicycle rider just happened to pull up. Okay, I just want to make that abundantly clear. I have not seen a guy riding a unicycle since Moses wore short pants. I don't know how the hell that 3 scenes later they were talking about about Harper used to ride a unicycle and get in the Iowa City paper for it, and then 3 beats later there's a unicycle rider. I know it's minor, but don't tell me that wasn't scripted.
I'm not going to argue the authenticity of that scene, but Steve, one day, this was like 6 months ago, give or take, I was driving home. There was a dude on a unicycle. I'm not joking. I'm not joking with you. There was a dude and here's the thing. It wasn't like That unicycle in the movie was more like a play. You know what? I don't know what you mean. This unicycle, it looked like he was in a jacket, a helmet, and it's like, this is actually how he gets home. That's what it looked like. Because the unicycle looked like a rugged, like mountain unicycle. I'm not joking.
Consider the places I've also moved for work too, and then you might realize why there hasn't been many unicycle riders in my experience. You try unicycle, it's hard to bike out here with the damn hills, but just the convenience of that.
Right?
That
No, you're right.
Unicycle rider rides by her childhood.
That's
home.
insane.
Like, I'm like, yeah, I don't. And then the only thing that was funny about this, and this is mean, but it kind of appeases my dislike of Will Ferrell, is when Harper tells the kid with the unicycle, you know who that is? That's Will Ferrell, and he just goes, "Cool." that pleased me.
That kid's not gonna know who Will Ferrell is.
He rides a unicycle.
But it's kind of cool to see Peoria get on TV. I will admit that. It was kind of cool to see that area.
Yeah, I know. When they said they were going to Illinois and I saw Peoria, I'm like, get the hell out of here. We're actually going to go to Peoria?
Catherine and I were watching. I'm like, I will shit if they go to Peru. I'm like, that would actually be a pretty good
we
place
see Steve
to go.
get his mail in the morning. Just like, hey, what the fuck's happening over there?
Yeah, it would have been because it was a shot. I would have been moved by then. But
oh yeah, true. Yeah.
I would have sent a photo. I would have sent a photo of Will Ferrell, the Sleepless group chat. Look what Jagoff's in my town. I guess we could move into star ratings though, but Will and Harper, it's now streaming on Netflix. It is an enjoyable watch. It truly is. It's hard to really clamp down on a movie that, again, I really think is well-intentioned, has some very nice moments. I don't want to give it away, but again, it's the scene after they go to the dirt track when they talk in the car that really is one of the most moving scenes in the whole movie. And some of the revelations that Harper experiences about maybe things that she feared were more a reflection in some ways of her insecurity. I don't want to say it's the entire reason, because I think she had more than enough valid reason to fear going into public, and especially the places she enjoys post-transitioning. But I think it's an interesting commentary all the more too. And I also think that the one thing that is communicated, despite my misgivings, is the genuine and healthy, happy friendship between two people who have been collaborators for many, many years. I said before, Steele actually wrote Casa de mi Padre, the Will Ferrell Spanish telenovela movie. She co-wrote Eurovision a few years ago, which was a Netflix movie. So she's accomplished too. And it's really nice that she gets sort of her just dues here as a career comedy writer who's lived in the background versus Will Ferrell, who's been in the foreground all these years. Again, It's on Netflix. It's a 3 out of 4 star for me. I enjoyed it. It's a quality documentary. It's got some good heartstring moments too. Misgivings and sort of my complaints about the production aside, I did really enjoy this. We'll go Joe, then Dom to send us home.
If I would have done this show immediately after watching the documentary, this would have been 4 stars for me. But the longer it sat with me, I was kind of like, okay, hold on a minute. Let me come down from this happiness of high that I have. And like, oh, everything's so good in the world, Harper. And then, like, she's going to find her place. And I'm like, wait, no, hold on, wait a minute. Like, there was a camera crew with them. That camera crew was visible. And, like, all these other things started to occur to me. Besides all that, I had a great time watching this. And I think it does such a great job at giving you the perspective of what it's like to be someone who is trans in this country and the dilemmas they go through of like just trying to live their lives before their transition. I think it does a great job at that. I think it's entertaining at doing that. It's funny from time to time. And it's just interesting to learn about their Harper. I didn't talk about this too much in my positives. Honestly, I wish there was more of the SNL stuff like Dom said, because learning about Will and Harper's relationship as friends and what they've been doing throughout their careers was actually interesting, and I would have loved to learn more about it and some of the other stuff that she did at SNL. My bad. And that, I would have loved to learn more about that and her connection with Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Seth Meyers, because and this is my bias because of my age group, but that's the SNL crew I grew up with. I would have loved to learn more about that. That's who I tuned in to watch on Saturday Night Live from time to time. But criticism aside and my positives that I'm glowing and raving about, this is a 3.5 out of 4 star documentary. It was good. I had a great time with it. Really cool that we got 2 documentaries, honestly, back to back in such a short span between this and Pharrell, sorry.
Will Ferrell and then Pharrell Williams as the that's really funny. Yeah, dude, if the People's Joker was the radical leftist trans message, Will and Harper is the suburban safe liberal trans message. And to be frank, you need both. You need freaking both. And that's really cool that we do get it at all. Because, you know, human rights is human rights. And that's what this whole battle over trans rights really is. So just to get any perspective of it is a good one, no matter how maybe a little flawed some of the premises of some of the scenes were, or rather how, however, Will Ferrell is doing his Will Ferrell thing at sometimes to the charging of some or others. But it's definitely a movie that certainly that your suburban liberal parents may need to watch, and it may even be a soft launch for some more conservative minded ones as well. It's just to humanize someone, humanize someone. Period. That's really all it is. This is what this documentary is all about, and that's something that I think is really cool and should be celebrated. So yeah, 3 out of 4 stars for me as well.
Really good review here of Will and Harper. Again, now on Netflix. That's our show tonight. Next week, we're going to tackle We Live in Time. We're going to tackle the new Andrew Garfield A24 romance drama. Interested in this movie. Don't know a whole lot about it. Don't want to know a whole lot about it. Kind of like to go into this one blind. I did a little reworking of the schedule, though, because it does come out technically first. The following week after We Live in Time, I put Conclave ahead of Here. So those are our next 3 movies. We got We Live in Time, Conclave with Ralph Fiennes, and we have Here.
Are you guys getting Conclave where you're at, though? Yeah,
we're getting it. We're seeing it Friday.
Right, and not Megalopolis?
No, we got Conclave. We got We Live in Time this week. We got Saturday night at the worst fucking times possible, like 4:15 on Sunday.
You did get Saturday night. Okay.
Yeah, finally. But they put it like the worst times possible.
They should do it a Saturday Night Live time.
I was going to say, what, they have it at fucking 11 o'clock at night, like when SNL comes on?
But at any rate, yeah, no, I'm super excited for Conclave. And I'm normally not crazy about those kind of movies, but that movie had me really interested from the trailer alone.
Yeah, that's what made me want to put on the schedule. I thought it was a really good trailer, and I love Ralph Fiennes.
I do too. So I'm all down for that. But next week we're talking We Live in Time. We will be back same time, same place, 6:30 Central Time on Wednesday. It's great to have you back, Dominic. Joe, thanks for doing all that you're doing, unseen but not unnoticed. Thank you so much for making sure this operation runs as smoothly as it does every single week. I greatly appreciate it. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.